Welcome back, you guys, and in case you missed the details, the Raptors received Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, while the Spurs got back DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a protected 2019 first-round pick in a trade this morning. First off, I gotta say good job by the Spurs and the Raptors, who I felt came out good in this trade, and I will explain why. Second off, sorry to DeMar DeRozan, because there's a slight chance you have to play LeBron in the playoffs again. You almost escaped playoff Bron. I'm very glad this is over and we can finally discuss what Kawhi and the Spurs will be doing going forward. What I wasn't expecting about 3 weeks ago was the Raptors doing this trade and not having to get rid of either OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, or Fred VanVleet. I'm assuming the Spurs had little leverage elsewhere and settled for this deal. I gotta give respect to Masai Ujiri and the Raptors for getting a superstar without losing their coveted young players. One reason I like this trade is that the Raptors are going to be very annoying on defense, and that's a good thing. If you thought the Raptors and their 5th best defensive rating in the league was going to be their peak, well, it's going to be better this year. When teams go small, the Raptors are going to be able to run a lineup with Lowry, Danny Green, Kawhi, and OG Anunoby. Plug in either Pascal Siakam, Jonas, or Ibaka, then you got a pretty strong defensive team. Kyle is getting older, and you can say what you want about him, but he's still a good point guard and a good defender. He's not a slouch on that side of the floor. Danny Green is getting older, but he's still a good defender, and I'd argue that he's one of the 5 best defensive shooting guards in the league. If Kawhi is at 90% of what he was, I don't think I need to explain why getting a Defensive Player of the Year is going to be good for the Raptors. OG Anunoby was the one guy on the Raptors that could actually contest LeBron. LeBron went off, of course, but OG had his moments of good defense, and he's just a rookie. Right there, you have 4 players that are not defensive liabilities. That will be very important in a playoff series against the Celtics or the Sixers. I favor the Celtics, but they can definitely match up and make it difficult to score. It's funny, of course the Raptors would build a team that would actually be able to reasonably defend any of those Cavs teams with LeBron on it, just as he leaves the conference, but hey, I'm sure they'll take it. Raptors fans, you gotta get excited about this. I know losing DeMar is tough, and I'll get to that at the end, but you gotta understand why the deal had to be done. You know what this Raptors team is already with DeMar leading it. He's a really good scorer, the team has a nice regular season, and they fold in the playoffs every year outside of 2016. DeMar really struggled to create shots in the postseason, and his defense was a glaring issue. There were moments in the playoffs against the Wizards and the Cavs where the Raptors were making a comeback with DeMar on the bench and Lowry as the main creator. They were playing better defense also. The Raptors also no longer have to deal with DeRozan's 3 years and $83 million left on his contract. Even if this doesn't work out and Kawhi goes to LA, you can still enter a retooling phase around your younger guys, have financial flexibility, and maybe make some draft splashes in the future. Also, if you factor in Boston, Philadelphia, and Indiana who are getting better, they probably weren't going to win anyways. Masai is looking to compete for championships, and it wasn't happening with DeMar. They just got swept by the Cavs, while the Celtics, without their 2 best players, took them to 7 games because they were able to defend. The Raptors will be able to defend next year, which is why I like this trade a lot. Again, the Raptors were able to pull off this deal without giving up the assets that Raptors fans really liked. It would hurt the Raptors' future going into the next decade if they lost one or more of OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, or Fred VanVleet, but he kept all of them. All those guys are fan favorites and contributed to their 59-win season. Around March, I really thought they'd make it to the finals. Obviously, I was wrong. Well, guess what? I think they have a better shot this year because LeBron is gone, and they'll actually be able to defend, which is huge in the playoffs. Of course, the risk here is that if Kawhi is not as good or he leaves in a year, the drop-off will be real. If it all goes bad, Toronto is risking what is probably another 3 years in the playoffs if they did not trade DeRozan. The remaining Raptors players may never mesh with Kawhi on and off the court, and the whole drama with his management may create some problems. But let's just say this move gets them to the finals. They keep Kawhi, that's a big thing for them, or it just puts them in the lottery in 2020. Either scenario has positives because one, you'll either be good, or you put your trust in a front office that has drafted well over the years. Now, for the Spurs side of the deal, they didn't get too much outside of DeMar, but this might have been the best they could have gotten. They got an all-star level player, and he will bring the mid-range game to San Antonio with LaMarcus Aldridge. We saw the Indiana Pacers this year use a lot of mid-range for their offensive possessions, and it worked out. The mid-range isn't completely dead yet. It got Indiana almost 50 wins and a Game 7 against the Cavs. You can bet the Spurs will be adjusting their offense to fit the mid-range strengths of DeRozan and Aldridge. The mid-range isn't too good of a shot in today's NBA, but the Spurs aren't going to be wasting possessions on guys who are bad at 17-footers. Both DeMar and LaMarcus are elite mid-range shooters. They're going to be able to make shots there, but they're also going to need some type of three-point shooting from the wing. DeMar has improved slightly as a three-point shooter, but he's not someone you can consistently rely on. The fit here is definitely weird. The way San Antonio's roster is built doesn't have much shooting on the outside, got weaker on defense on the perimeter, and they just lost a top 5 player. It's going to be hard to come back from that, but I'm assuming the Spurs weren't getting much traction from other teams and settled on getting the best player and an intriguing young center. At the end of the day, the Spurs were able to get another 20-point per game scorer next to Aldridge, and as of now, I'll have them penciled in as a playoff team. They also get Jakob Poeltl, who was part of the Raptors' awesome bench last year. He is a 7-foot center that can't shoot threes, but he has potential as a rim protector and someone who is mobile on his feet. He's only 22 and could grow into a starter. Now, I definitely have to agree with what everyone is saying about DeMar DeRozan. Lou Williams of the LA Clippers said this on Twitter: DeMar was very loyal to that team, loved that city, and truly helped build something from the ground up. The Raptors used to be very bad after Chris Bosh left, and while he never pushed them to the finals, he brought them back to relevance. Think about how many new basketball fans DeMar DeRozan helped make in Toronto. He's arguably the best player in franchise history, and he just got shipped out for a guy who might leave in a year. When you think of Toronto basketball, one of the first things I think of is DeMar DeRozan. It's pretty messed up that he was traded after he was told at Summer League that he wasn't going to get traded. Ruthless business. I actually met DeMar at a hotel in Phoenix back in December after they played a game against the Suns. Nice dude, and I hope he does well in San Antonio. And of course, what do you guys think of this whole ordeal? Any Spurs fans in here? Raptors fans? I think both teams did well in regards to what they're trying to do currently and in the future. The Spurs still need to be able to compete as long as Pop is still coaching, and they got a good player out of it. The Raptors have one of their best shots at making the finals and will be an even better defensive team next year. If Kawhi leaves next season, so be it. You have a nice young core that is actually good, you will have cap space, and you've proven that you can draft well. I like the title gamble by the Raptors. I know it hurts to lose DeMar, but I think this could go well. As always, appreciate you guys for coming through and supporting the channel. More videos on the way, and I'll see you guys soon.